did or anything like that. Well, that son of a gun, he deserved it. He's been bothering me for years. Well, I assure you, that kind of statement's going to come back to haunt you. So watch what you say, write down everything, and then, seek the advice of legal counsel.
So that's fantastic, fantastic advice. I had an incident. Yeah, this is Victor, by the way. I had an incident where I had to discharge a warning shot because the victim was just too close to the person that was robbing them, and the adrenaline dump makes you really, really want to be Gabby, but you have to be able to articulate. Does the person have the ability, the opportunity, and was somebody in jeopardy of serious bodily harm or death? And that certainly is the way it works out, or it did for me.
I don't know. I just recently an old soldier of mine called me from his house, all in a panic. 3 people tried to break into his house, and he in turn shot one in the butt, one in the leg, and the third person got away scot-free. But he never called the police directly after. He called me 2 hours later, wondering what he should do. And
what did he do?
I informed him he needed to call the police department. Get off the phone with me, call the police department, and he did so. And the biggest thing is like Hinesville Police Department, probably not. I'm not going to say anything bad about them. I don't think they really maybe handled the situation correctly. It was 2 hours later, but they didn't take him in and question him. They didn't confiscate his weapon. They didn't do anything to that nature. They found a bloody bat in his driveway right where he left it. They could see, some type of carnage had happened. So, but other than that, they didn't follow up with anything. They didn't try to find out who he shot. It was just like you shot 2 people. They're not dead. You're fine.
Well, if this is Dan again, if I could interject in that, and it's nothing saying about one police department or another. I mean, I've worked with a couple of different police departments over the years. I mean, I'm a civilian as well, and I understand. First and foremost, your friend didn't find urgency. Maybe he didn't know what to do. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe he was just looking for answers and didn't know where to look, and you happened to be the person that he talked to, and you gave him the advice that he needed to know. Not everyone knows what to do after a shoot, but maybe it's because he didn't find urgency in it, that the law enforcement, there was no imminent danger at that time, so I don't know how long the law enforcement officers took to arrive, but the imminent danger apparently was over, so it wasn't, let's say, top on their list to do a Code 3 response. But, I'm sure behind the scenes, I mean, civilians see law enforcement only when they interact with them. They many times don't see them. And it's only when they interact, and many times when they interact, it's because they have, there was a problem, or they have created a problem themselves. Most of the time, you're just going to see a car driving by, but because this wasn't imminent, doesn't mean that behind the scenes they weren't doing stuff like contacting. I mean, most people to get shot or injured, they're probably going to go to a hospital. They're probably going to, fabricate some reason as to why they got shot. Of course, if they go to the same hospital, then that's a little more strange, if you will. One shot in the backside, one shot in the leg. But you know, they're going to put out the bolos, if you will, at the hospitals to find out if anyone has been injured via gunfire. And usually the hospitals will have some type of protocol with the law enforcement divisions that are going to say, you know, oh, we've got a gunshot victim in here. Here's his story, and they'll come in and do a follow-up investigation or primary investigation on it. So not all law enforcement officers are created equal. Not all law enforcement agencies are created equal. So your responsive or their lack of response, if you will, that's going to differ from one location to the other. I'm familiar with the Hinesville PD. I mean, when I was in the academy there, I taught officers who were from Hinesville PD as well as, you know, Savannah and the surrounding areas as well. So, you know, I wasn't there for that, but I can assure you probably something was going on behind the scenes. But again, your friend didn't have urgency in it, and there was no imminent danger.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was really taken aback at the fact that it was like they were there for 15 minutes. He called me back. Hey, everything's good to go. Really? Okay, works for me.
You know, you mentioned about no firearms were confiscated. Well, you know, did it warrant the confiscation of a firearm at that time? No. Could it be that, you know, in a follow-up investigation, had someone come forth that was injured and they were doing an investigation, they may have come back and requested his firearm for ballistic purposes. But, you know, some jurisdictions, even if that same scenario happened, I would bet my bottom dollar that they would be yanking your firearms from you, you know, violating whatever, you know, Second Amendment rights that you think you have at that time, and they would be doing it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. I'm going to present the scenario I presented last week.
Okay.
You're at the gas station. It's right about closing time. You're the only person in there. It's you and a clerk when you walk in the door. You go to the back and you grab yourself a drink. While your back's turned, 3 more guys walk in. They're masked and they're armed and they're robbing the place. Would you step in and help, or would you step in and help the clerk, or would you, you know, kind of just stay out of sight, stay out of mind, call 911, and try to stay out of the situation? But keep in mind, there's 3 of them, and we're in the southeast where there's a lot of gang violence. So that's the scenario. What steps would you take at that point?
Who's going first?
Well, we all tried Meadows should start off this.
Okay.
I'm going to throw it at Victor because he wasn't here for that one last week. Let's see where he goes with it, and then we'll just go from Victor to Dan, and then back to Natalie and Travis.
All right.
Well, you know, yeah, this is Vic. As a civilian, armed or not, you know, there's 2 ways to look at it. Number one, as just a civilian, I have no duty to protect anyone other than myself or my family, both legally and morally. You know, I'm not obligated to protect the public. I'm not at work carrying a weapon there where I'm obligated to protect certain assets and people. I am just Joe Blow out there getting a cup of gas station cappuccino. Personally, if I did not think that serious bodily harm or death was imminent from the robbers, is I would probably try to find a position of cover and concealment. I would have my weapon at the ready, probably in position stool or something very similar, and I would observe. And while I was observing, if I could discreetly and surreptitiously call the police, I would describe the situation. I would describe myself, describe the perpetrators, their weapons, and exactly what was going on. And I would try at that point to be a good witness. Now, if, you know, there's certain lines in my mind if they're crossed, one has to act. If you're discovered, you're probably going to have to act. If the clerks are taken to the back, the back of the store, if they're put on their knees, or if they're being loaded in a vehicle being taken somewhere else, those are probably lines that are crossed where you would probably have at least the right, if not the duty, to act. So that's my take on it.
All right. Where does that one sit with you, Dan?
Well, first of all, and I taught this back in the academy many years ago, and it also follows through for civilians as well. The worst thing that could happen to either a law enforcement officer or to a civilian is that you brandish tombstone courage. Exactly what he had stated just a moment ago is, seek cover and concealment would be first and foremost in my mind. If I've always got my phone with me. It doesn't always, depending on what part of the country I'm in, whether it works or not. But if I could dial 911 and at least give a location and as quiet as I could, and what is taking place, I would advise that to the dispatcher. If I was, still undiscovered, and be able to give a play-by-play to the law enforcement dispatcher about what's going on, what's taking place, as he had stated just a moment ago, address anything about the firearms and such as that, I would do so. The fine line does come into play if, I'm in there with myself, my family, and we are now discovered and a imminent threat may be towards me. As far as you mentioning you do not have a duty to protect, I think the Supreme Court has even said that in many cases, law enforcement officers don't have a duty to protect either. Even though they, it's kind of an observed document report and, file paperwork after that. But, I can say that having spent many years as a law enforcement officer. But protecting myself would be first and foremost. If I could, I would protect the store clerk as well. But again, I'm going to protect myself, my family first. If I'm discovered, then depending on the approach of how I'm discovered, what they're doing, if they're pointing a firearm at me, something like that, again, as he had stated, my weapon would already been, drawn at a low ready or a position of ready to engage if it was necessary. So I would tend to agree exactly what he said. And do the best I could, but I'm going to protect me. I assure you, I will go down with a fight.
Sounds like we're going around the table. All right, Natalie.
Right. Well, that kind of chimes in with what I said last week on it. I think was it's not going to do much good to draw a firearm and make oneself noticed and be the event oneself that precipitates other consequences. So the incident you're describing, nothing has been fired as yet. They're threatening the clerk. Everything's at the threat level, and I haven't been noticed. I don't want to be the incident, them noticing me or my firing be the incident that precipitates, their actions. And so, if I haven't been noticed, I think that's something to take advantage of. Get into a good position yourself, because if you're not in a good position, you're not going to be able to do anything effectively anyway. And if you can, certainly summon law enforcement so they know the situation. And then it ties into to my point earlier that the situation is dynamic at that point. You have to take in mind what else is going on and how is it unfolding, because, you just don't know, if that's the given scenario at